welcome to my gathering basket. My name is Donnell. Thank you once again for joining me. I have quite a few things to show you today. I am so happy to have some progress to show you instead of just dishcloths. So let me start off with some spinning because I have made it 15 minutes every day through the month of January. Oh, and happy February, by the way. So I joined the Spin 15 a day. You can follow that. I think it's mostly on Instagram. I'm not really sure, but that's where I follow along. And the inspiring pictures that people put up. Okay, so sometimes they're inspiring and sometimes they're a little bit humiliating because, well, I've been working on this 50-50 silk yak blend. And this is what I have gotten done for the entire month of January. I was gonna weigh it. It's about an ounce, a little bit less. I ended up getting, I believe, somewhere between 130 and 140 yards out of it. It's pretty thin. I did a 2-ply. If I can show you, there we go. So it's fairly thin. It's gonna, I think, knit up pretty much like a lace weight. Of course, those fibers are a little bit heavier than just a plain wool. So you don't get as much for the weight. But I was pretty happy with how you can just barely, the light is catching it. We've got a really pretty sunny day, so you can see that shine to the silk in there. It was so much fun to spin. But I will say by the time I got to the last few little pieces to put on my spindle, I did this on the Turkish drop spindle, and it was getting a little too full. It was getting to the point where I couldn't, just the weight of it was wanting to pull the yarn too much, and I was getting a lot of breakage and having to repair. But I really wanted to ply this 2-ply from a center pull ball, like you can create the little turtle cup that you can create with a Turkish spindle. So that was kind of my limiting factor on this one. But I'm very proud of the yarn that came through, and I'm not sure if I will leave it like this and try to enter this into the state fair this year, or if I'm going to try to get it knit up into something. That's part of the problem. 130 yards, lace weight. I have 5 more colors, I believe, is what I decided, that I need to spin up to make a gradient. So I think it would make a wonderful cozy cowl. It would be beautiful as a lace weight shawl. But this took me 1 month to get made up. So it may have to be a yarn entry for the spinning category this year, and then maybe next year I'll have them all done. I'm not really sure whether I want to pull another color for the month of February and just keep working on this. I plied it on my wheel instead of plying it on the spindle, and it really felt good to be treadling that wheel again. So I kind of think I want to get something going on the wheel and have a little bit more to show for the month of February for my 15 minutes a day than just this little bit. But if I hadn't spun 15 minutes a day, I probably wouldn't have even had this much done. So again, the power of 15 minutes a day. But I did want to show you that. I still haven't started spinning the Jacob again. That's kind of been the long term. So I got started moving things around to try to reorganize my living space so that maybe it will be a little bit more tempting, like it was several months ago, to sit down and work on my e-spinner. I want to get that done. So that's my spinning to report. And then as far as knitting goes, I have a little bit to show you. This is the Sheep Heid Hat by Davies. And I had like 3 rows done. I've got this all tangled up here. I had about 3 rows to show you last time. And I sat down this morning before church. I had some time and got a few more rows knit up on it. So that's as far as I am. I am through the first chart, which sounds amazing until you realize that chart 1 is 4 rows long. So I got through the first chart, and you can't see it because I'm just on the first row, but I'm actually starting the legs of the sheep. So I'm in chart B, and it is going pretty well, I think. I like the way this yarn is working up. This is Jamieson and Smith, and it is their, sorry, crinkling here, get this out of my bag. Jamieson and Smith in their, I think this is Shetland Supreme, although that doesn't have the information on it. Yes, so Jamieson and Smith, and it is in their Shetland Supreme jumper weight. So I don't know if you can see that. And these are all natural shades. So I would love to be able to pronounce all of these correctly. This is the musket and the moret that I am using. So there's the 2 balls, if you can see by the glare. And these are balls left over from my friend Tammy's hat that she made, and she graciously gave me her leftovers and said this is probably enough for you to knit a hat, and I do think she's going to be right. So anyway, I am, you see in the picture, there's chart A is just that little ribbon look, and then I have just barely started into the yow's feet, and I've got another 4 rows, I think, to get that part done, and then I'll be on to the sheep, and then it will really start looking like a fun Fair Isle hat. So I was happy to be able to have a little bit of progress, and this is on my February list of things to do. I told you last time I was going to try to join along with Amy of Noble Character Crafts, and she was doing a cowl with the Make 9. So if you're not familiar with Make 9, it's basically picking 9 things that you want to do this coming year. And it started out, I think, with sewing. I think that's what I've heard, to make like 9 garments in the me-made wardrobe kind of fashion. And that's, I think, where it kind of started out, and then knitters got a hold of it, and it's kind of become a wider branched thing. So you've probably seen it if you follow along with anything knitting on Instagram. There goes one jumping sheep. So anyway, I wasn't going to do that because I didn't want to put pressure on myself, but I did have some things that I really like this hat I wanted to get done this year. So I thought, if I go ahead and join in with her group and see other people's progress, I think she's already done like 3. She made 2 lists, and I think she's already done 3 on one of her lists. So inspired by her list and having some bigger projects and some smaller projects, I made up my list. And if I can, I will insert a picture of the grid that I posted on Instagram. So those are my 9 things, and I will probably talk about them more as I go along, but this Sheep Heid Hat is definitely one of them. And then I thought about making up a quilting Make 9 list, but I just didn't get it all put together. So we'll go with the knitting one for this year, and maybe next year I'll do a quilting Make 9 as well. So that's the first one of my list that I'm getting some progress. I think it's something along the lines of about 75 rows, 70, 75, something like that. I can't remember exactly. And so if I can just do a couple rows a day, kind of like the spinning, if I can just break it down into a couple rows a day, it's not that bad. It's a hat pattern. So it is color work, but it's totally doable. So I'm hoping to do that in the month of February. I also have a sweater that I need to get cracking on. I don't have any progress to show you on that one, nothing interesting, so hopefully I'll have some progress next time. You guys are a big help because there's probably a lot of projects that I would totally ignore, just set aside even more than I do already. But it's fun to have something to show. And definitely doing a Make 9, like a year-long list, can be sometimes, to me, even though I'm a list person, sometimes that can be a little defeating because it's like I can't do anything new because I have to focus on these. But that definitely working from stash, this is a nice way to do it. And like I said, having kind of, I don't want to say peer pressure, but having other people working on their lists as well is hopefully, I've not done this before. No, that's wrong. I did it once before and totally failed. Decided I didn't want to do anything on my list. So we'll see. These are all projects that I am definitely motivated to get done and would love to see done. So then once I did that list, then I started going, like I said, quilting list and 9 skeins or 9 braids that I wanted to get done. And I started just, and then I thought, I probably better dial this down and make it a little bit more manageable. So we're gonna go with those 9 patterns. And as you see, I have several hats, I have several sweaters, and then just as a freebie, I popped in some cotton bowl covers, microwave bowl covers. Those shouldn't take a whole lot of time. I wanted to make some in fabric, like the quilted bowl covers, and I just haven't gotten around to it. And I thought, well, at some point I'm gonna finish up my dishcloths and I will have some leftover cotton yarn to use, and I can make those up in crochet. And it's just a little bit different because everybody's doing the fabric ones. So I don't know if I will get links to every one of the patterns in my description box. I will do my best. But that's going to be, I'll definitely have information as I go along and as I tackle some of these projects. So speaking of dishcloths, I have 20 made since I talked to you last. This was my progress since the first of the year. My goal is to do 20 a month, and that should mean I will have this project done before summer. I am, if you have not been with me before, I am working on a goal of having 200 dishcloths done for our church's Operation Christmas Child collection in October. So I think I was at like 75 at the end of the year. Good grief, I can't even remember. But I had it broken down that I wanted to do 20 a month, and then I should be done by end of May into June, something like that. Knowing that this is starting to get into, like, this is the end of my crafting period for the year, and we'll start getting into garden season and I won't have as much time. So I'm kind of trying to front load a little bit, but I got my 20 done. There is actually, I think I have 21, because this morning when I was digging in my purse getting ready to go to church, I found one that I had made on the go and completely forgotten about. So I still have to weave in the ends on that one, but all the rest of them are done. So I will confess that January 31st, I actually stayed up late because I needed to get one more done in order to have my 20 for the month. Had I known about this one, I could have gone to bed early. But I'm not going to go through all of them. I did do a number of scrap ones, just using up pieces and then combining with another color, and I really like these until you get to the end and you have to weave in the ends, because somehow or other having like 8 ends to weave in on one little tiny dishcloth just seems a little bit crazy, but I really like the way they turn out. So I got those done. I did do a few crocheted ones. That's what I stayed up early or late to do the other night, because I knew I could whip out a few. I think these were the 2 that I did the other night, because I knew these take me 30 minutes tops. So I could do those real quick and meet my goal. And there's just something really empowering, I don't know if that's the right word, about checking that off your list, making your goal. Makes it so much easier to go into the next month when you don't have, you don't already have the to-do left over from the month before. I don't know if that makes any sense, but for me, it was worth an extra 30 minutes and to stay up. So a few more, and let's see. These are mostly, I love this cotton from Hobby Lobby. I do have some sugar and cream. Those were some that I made up, just kind of using up some bits. And yeah, that's probably, there's another one. I thought this was kind of cute. It almost looks like a heart the way it pulled. And yeah, that's probably, those are those are the main ones. So just lots of different colors. Some of these I have been given little pieces, so I just went through and combined them. Like this one, I had about half of what I needed, so I put white in with it, and it just made it look more variegated. What I am doing, you've seen this color several times, what I am doing is grabbing a skein of yarn and just starting in. I can make about 3 in a skein of yarn, and then go on to the next skein. So the skeins are about like this, and I just pick up one, and one lives in my purse and one lives by my knitting chair, and then I just go. I did have a couple people contact me with their preferred ways of doing dishcloths. I knit mine on short straights. They're clover bamboos, and I really like those. I have tried several different kinds of needles, and for me, those just work really well. Partly because I like using the speed of using the metal, but what I found was that even though the bamboo kind of sticks a little bit, I don't have to grip so hard. When I was using the metal needles, it felt like I had to hold onto the project tighter, which just made my hands hurt. So I actually found that I can knit a little bit with a little less stress to my hands when I'm knitting with the bamboo. Somebody else contacted me, I believe on Instagram, and I think it was Robin, and I'm so sorry if I've totally messed that up. It's been a while back, and said that she knits hers 2 at a time on circulars, which sounded brilliant. And she asked if I had ever done that, and I said, nope, but I will now. So I sat down and did, and what she said she does is 2 coordinating colors. And I think the ones that I did, if I remember right, which I probably don't, I think it was these 2 that I did. And she works like a solid color and a variegated together so that it's just a little bit more interesting. And when you're done, you have 2 done. So it sounded brilliant, and I sat down and did it. If you've been with me for a while, you know that my success with 2 at a time socks is not stellar. And I didn't have great success with the dishcloths either. Not because it's not a good way to do it. And I mention it here not to be critical, but to say that if you are good at 2 at a time socks, that might be something that you try, because it was really nice to go 2 at a time. However, I kind of do this knitting when I am brainless, and 2 at a time takes a little bit more brain power than I typically have when I'm sitting down and working on dishcloths. So what I found myself doing is autopiloting, and I would go across dishcloth A and into dishcloth B, come back across B, and then turn around and go back across B, and I was constantly out of line, which is kind of what I did on socks too. So it didn't work this time for me. Not to say that I won't try it again. But if you do like 2 at a time, it never occurred to me to try 2 at a time dishcloths. I don't know why. So I just pass that on as something to consider. And I may try it again, and maybe on the 3rd or 4th try, I will get it. It will click, and because I'd really like to be able to do stuff at 2 at a time. I think doing sleeves would be fantastic. But it doesn't work real well if you lose track of where you are and you do 2 extra rows on one sleeve, then yeah. So apparently I am not smart enough to do 2 at a time. But if you are, and you're a dishcloth knitter, give that a try. I think it sounds like a great idea. You just have to be a little bit more brilliant than I am. So there's your tip, and let me know if it works for you. Or if you have other dishcloth knitting tips, yeah, share them, because I think I'm a little over the halfway point now, and that feels really good. And I already have 2 done for the month of February, so I'm off to a good start. So there you go. That's the dishcloth update. And thank you for all of you that have said that you are knitting dishcloths too. They are wonderful gifts. In fact, this morning I was knitting before church. Actually, I was knitting in church too. I didn't have anybody sitting right directly around me. And the people that were closest to me all just gave me a chuckle and told me that their aunt did that all the time too. So I don't always, but this morning was one time that I had the freedom to be able to knit during church as well. And the fun part was then I could tell people, hey, I'm gearing up to Operation Christmas Child, you know, are you? And but one of my friends in front of me turned around and she said, what are you knitting? And I said, well, I'm working on a dishcloth, and told her why. And she said, oh, I love knitted dishcloths. My aunt makes them for me every once in a while. I never get enough, and they last forever. But she said, I don't want to ask her for more. So I may have to knit her up a dishcloth and give it to Lori just for fun, for a fun surprise. So there's the dishcloths. And then let's see, I think as far as stitching projects, that's about all I have to report into you. I have a couple other things kind of started, but nothing that's interesting enough or to really have enough to show you. The other yarny thing that I have, though, I got a package from Shetland. I was so excited. So I have talked before about selling rugs and dishcloths and several other handmade things at a local store. And I sold enough rugs last month that I was able to place an order with Jamieson and Smith. And I did look around at some places in the US to have it shipped, thinking that the shipping would be better, easier, I'd get it faster, whatever. But I really wanted cone yarn so I can use it on my, as yet not taken out of the box, knitting machine that I inherited back in November. Oh, I've got to get that work done. It has a couple, it just needs cleaned up, and I believe it needs a sponge bar placed on it, which I still have to figure out exactly what that is and how to get one. Again, if anybody has advice, if you're a machine knitter, I would love to. I've watched videos. I just haven't had the time to, I haven't taken the time to sit down with the book and the books that I've bought so far. And funny thing, when you buy books, you have to read them in order to know what they say and to learn the content, right? And so I've bought the books and I feel like I'm smart because I have the books, but I have to get them read. So hopefully I can get that done before garden season, but I digress. I needed some cone yarn. I didn't want to have to wind my own, and my experience with circular knitting machines, if you have a good cone of yarn, it just eliminates a lot of problems right from the get-go. Not that you can't wind your own, and I certainly did, but when I started, probably the best piece of advice I got from one of the teachers that I took a class from for the circular sock knitting machine, said start with a cone of yarn and just knit the whole thing up. And that way you know that the yarn kind of isn't a variable. You can play with tension, you can play with speed, you can play with stitches, all that kind of stuff, and not have to worry about the yarn being a variable. So I thought that was very helpful with the CSM, and I thought with this, I'm just going to do the same thing. And the yarns on the cone, and I think I've talked about this before, so sorry if I'm boring you, but usually the yarns on cones, some of the spinning oil from when they spin the yarn is left in it. So the first time I used a cone yarn, I thought it was the awfulest stuff, and it just, and the person that I got it from kind of warned me, you know, this still has some of the oil. Don't just knit it up and you'll be really impressed when you get it washed and blocked. And she was totally right. It bloomed out beautifully. So I thought, and they say that having that oil makes it a whole lot easier to work through the machine. And again, I have the same experience with the CSM, circular sock machine. So I went ahead and bought Jamieson and Smith yarn on the cone, and I'm sure that it's available somewhere in the US, but I didn't find it. And to be honest, the shipping wasn't bad for coming from Shetland Islands. So I ordered 3 cones of yarn, and these I believe are 1 pound. I think they're a ½ kilo. I should know that for sure. I'm pretty, yeah, 500 grams. So I got and this is really coming up fiery red. It's more of a Christmas red, blowing out a little bit. And then I got a blue, and I also got a natural white. So it looks like I am knitting American flags. I am not. My thought was that I would be able to do some of the Fair Isle kind of traditional Christmas ornaments. I'd really like to do some stockings. So I wanted to be able to do red and white, blue and white. I really want to do, there's a pattern that's been out for quite some time. There's a pattern that's been out for quite some time for Advent stockings, little mini stockings, and I'd really like to do that. And the pattern calls for, I believe it's red, gray, white, black, and blue, I think. So I thought, if nothing else, I have those colors that I can use. So, and then I also, while I was at it, got some gray. I wanted to buy a whole nother cone. And I'm hoping that I'm able to make this work and buy more. But if you remember, I had bought some of the Uredale yarn when I was in Shetland, and I got 3 colors, kind of a burgundy, a dark brown, almost black, and a gray. Another thing I have on my Make 9 list is the Bousta beanie hat, and I'll link the information with that. I believe that one is by Mary Jane Mucklestone, and I really want it. It's a 3-color hat, and I thought that those 3 colors from Uredale would be fantastic. However, I did not have the pattern when I bought the yarn, and I really wasn't even convinced that that's what I was going to make. So I had bought 1 skein, 25 grams, 1 skein of each color, and really I need 2 of 1 color. So I went ahead and ordered the Jamiesons in the gray that was as close to the Uredale gray, and I think I'm going to use this. I'm still debating. I think I'm going to use the Jamiesons and then the 2 colors of the Uredale. I thought about taking the Uredale just as far as it would go and maybe just doing the brim out of this. I'm not really sure. That's kind of next, as soon as I get the Sheep Heid hat done, and then I want to get the palette sweater finished, and then the Bousta beanie is probably going to be the next one on the list. So I have a little bit of time to think, but I really like this gray. It's just a natural heathery kind of shade. So that was so much fun to come home from work at lunch and see a package sitting on my door all the way from the Shetland Islands. Like I said, hopefully I can order again someday, but this is definitely 1,500 grams of cone yarns. Should get me to the point where I'm fairly decent, fairly proficient at the knitting machine if I'm going to be. So, and if it just doesn't click and I can't figure it out, they are colors with Fair Isle knitting that I will definitely use. I could totally see myself making that whole thing up with just Christmas ornaments. I think it would be so much fun to have those colors, just, you know, have a whole Christmas tree full of Christmas balls knit up. So either way, I will use them. But hopefully I will get that knitting machine. I have got to. That was one of my January goals as well, and that one did not get marked off the list. So, but what has really been taking my time here lately has been quilting. I've done a number of customer quilts on my long arm machine. That has been wonderful. It's been a little bit overwhelming, but in a good way. I'm very excited to have people actually putting trust in me to do their quilts. That's been a lot of fun, very rewarding. I've also been doing just a lot of playing and experimenting on my own. And in order to do that, I have to have some quilts of my own to work on. So I think I told you last time that I have a niece that's graduating this year. She graduates in March, so right around the corner. And she picked out this pattern. And I don't know if I had the pattern yet last time I talked to you, but this is from Cozy Quilt Designs and called Tranquility Place. It was done as a block of the month program, which is kind of like a quilt along. And what they do is, like, 1 week. So I was really intimidated. It's a queen size quilt, and it just looked like a whole lot of intricate quilting or piecing in this. And then when I got the pattern and started actually reading through it, it's brilliant. It's done in 4 steps, and there's only 4 blocks on this, and then the borders. So basically, this center piece here, this center square is a block, and then the sides are a block, and the star is a block, and then each of these down here. So when I actually broke it down into what I needed, the elements that I needed to do, I thought, I can do this. So this is on my February quilting list, and I hope to get this all finished this month and on and off the long arm if I possibly can. She picked out her own colors, sent me a paint swatch color card, and last night I sat down and I thought, if I can just get at least all of one block cut out, then I can get started. And the hardest part is getting started, right? So these are her colors, and I've got them all laid out. Let's see, I've got those. It's all reds, purples, and blacks, and then a cream. So what I did is, because it's basically 4 blocks, I sat down and I ended up cutting out the entire quilt last night. I felt so accomplished. I thought it was 9:30 and I was gonna get a few other things done, and I looked at my clock and it was 11:05. So this was all I got done last night. But like I said, having this part done, having all my pieces cut out, and then I just have like little stick-on labels, and this tells me that this is block 4 and it's color C, pattern piece C. And I did that with all my blocks so that I don't forget tomorrow which one I wanted where, because it took me forever to figure that out. And so then really it's just putting it together. And the thing that held me up, the reason I did not get started on the sewing is without trying to get too technical, in quilting you usually use a 1/4 inch seam. And there's kind of 2 1/4 inch seams, which, like, really, how can you have 1/4 inch is a 1/4 inch, right? But in quilting, there is what's called a true quarter and a scant quarter. A scant quarter is literally 1 thread less than a 1/4. And what it allows you to do is when you open up that piece and iron it, you lose just a slight amount where the fabric folds. So in theory, if you have it set right, when you open up that piece and you've used a scant quarter, you've actually taken off a 1/4 inch seam on each side. Some patterns that's critical for, and some it's not. So this pattern in the directions, because this time I was a good girl and read all the directions first. Don't always do that. But it specifically said to use a scant quarter. Now there's ways that you can take any sewing machine and make a scant quarter. I use vintage machines. The one that I'm sewing this on is my 1950 featherweight. So it doesn't have the ability to move the needle. So your sewing machine needle, and I'm sorry if you guys are not interested in quilting, let me know, because I'm never sure exactly what content to focus on. But these old machines, you don't have quite the maneuverability that you do on some of the newer machines. I just don't have the bells and whistles. Love my machine, but it doesn't have all the fancy stuff. So when I go to do a scant quarter, I have to really do a lot of measuring and testing, like gauge swatching basically, with my sewing machine to make it exactly accurate. And so what I did was I splurged and used a little bit of my sales money from crafts to purchase a scant 1/4 inch foot. So it's a sewing machine presser foot that has a little gauge. It's specifically measured to be a scant 1/4, and it has a little edge on it, so you can run your fabric right up to the edge and know you're getting a scant 1/4. Well, it was supposed to arrive yesterday, and apparently it's gotten a little bit sidetracked in the mail. So it's still in Kansas City, and I'm hoping it comes in the next couple of days. So as soon as that comes, then I can start assembling this, and really looking at the pieces, I don't think it's going to be nearly as hard as I thought it was going to be. So I have reason to hope that I can get this done and quilted in time for her graduation. So that's the tranquility place. And that's kind of how I attack my quilting, is through this method. I had to go over to my mom's yesterday and say, do you have any paper plates? Because I don't have any in the house. And these serving plates were perfect for what I needed. So I have all my plates stacked up and ready to go on that project as soon as I get the foot. Then, I know I told you last time that I was hoping to participate in, or thinking about participating in, the Meadowland Cow. This starts on February 3rd, which for me is tomorrow. I posted on Instagram that I think this might be the only time I have been looking forward or anxious for a Monday to get here. This is the Meadowland pattern. It's from Then Came June, by Megan Buchanan is the designer behind Then Came June. And this is a really fun pattern. And one of the things that I really like, and you see this sometimes with quilting patterns, and I love it when they do it, she puts in a coloring page so that you can, it's got all the pieces marked, and you can basically color it in. And the funny thing with this, if you're a quilter and interested, look up the Meadowland Quilt Cal, or just Meadowland Quilt hashtag on Instagram. She has a very modern aesthetic. I am definitely more traditional. There are no bad looking Meadowland quilts posted. There is everything from traditional, from 2-color, 3-color, to monochromatic, a gradient. That's what I'm looking for. There is several of them. One in particular I can think of that is a gradient in a rainbow where they've color washed from one end to the other. There are so many. One girl posted she was doing all of hers in Halloween fabrics. Somebody else posted they were doing, I've seen several, they were doing Christmas fabrics. I mean, it is just, and it is literally one block. Like, this is what you are making, and you are just repeating it a number of times. So the quilt along, I believe, is set up for 5 weeks. It starts tomorrow, but tomorrow, the first week, is just cutting all your pieces. I did all of the pieces for that quilt in one evening. I hope I can get all the pieces cut for this one in 1 week. So what I am doing, though, the quilt along, you can do any size, and I love that this pattern is anywhere from a crib size up to a queen size. And I am doing actually the next to the largest. I am doing, it's considered a queen, I believe. Let me look. Oh, they just say bed size. So there's a small throw, 48 by 48, which is usually kind of, it's a large crib size. And then there's a small throw, large throw, and bed size. And she's got 2 different size options for each category. So the one that I am doing is the 80 by 80. It is 25 blocks. And I think I'm gonna add, I'm not a big fan of square quilts, and I do want to put this on a full size. I have a full size bed, but it's up high, so I'd like to have longer drops. So I usually do something like a queen size oblong, and that just works out well for the type of bed that I have. So I'm gonna do the 25 block. The quilt along, really, you can do any size, but kind of the one that she is doing and has rigged all of the, like, this week we do so much, this week we do so much, is the one that's listed here, which is 20 blocks, which is a really large throw. So I've kind of upped the ante just a little bit on myself. I'm hoping I can get it done. But again, having a group to do it along with and be able to get excited and not compare notes necessarily, but just, I'm hoping the energy there will keep me going. I think they said last year when they did this quilt along with the same quilt, they had over 3,000 people involved. So the first step is picking out your fabrics, and she has several videos and a lot of information on her blogs on how to pick out colors, kind of her process of how she picks out colors. It was very much like the process when I was looking at, when I was in Shetland and talking to people at the yarn shops about how they pick out Fair Isle pattern, you know, what colors go together, what highlights and lowlights you need, and that kind of thing. But I took the easy way out. And our quilt shop where I work was having a big sale on any pre-cuts. And pre-cuts are bolts of fabric they have cut down into specific sizes and put together in groups. So I got a fat quarter bundle. This is probably the biggest quilting splurge I have ever made in my life. But really, I think it's going to be enough focal fabrics for me to make 2 quilts, at least one bed size and a good size throw. So it won't be just, but it does give me some options in what I want to use for this quilt. This is by Moda Fabric. The designer is Fig Tree, Joanna Figueroa, and this is the Chantilly line. So there's the pattern tag, and you can see the colors are actually coming out true. For this quilt, I will probably be using from about here down. And then I have a really pretty, I matched this yellow in just a solid, but just that really creamy yellow. And I'm going to be using that for my background fabric. So basically these fabrics will be the colors here, and instead of a white background here, I will have yellow. So I'm hoping that'll make a really cream. Somebody said when I posted the fabric, she said, "Oh, creamy colors," and that's really what I was going for. So that will be, like I said, somewhere about here down. So I will have some whites, but from here up are the cooler colors, kind of that pale blue and a little bit more of a blue green here rather than the yellow green. So these I think will make a really, really sweet throw, and I should have plenty of fabric to do another quilt with those. So that's my plan. And tomorrow I will get started cutting this out. So hopefully next time I podcast, I will have at least, well, if I can stay up with the quilt along, I should have at least 10 done, 10 blocks. So I'll have some that I can show you. And if you're interested, it's the kind of thing that you can join in pretty much at any time. There are still people posting on Instagram from last year's Meadowland Cow and finishing it up. So definitely something if you're interested. At first, I really didn't think I would be interested in doing this one, but the more options, the more, and that's the fun of Instagram, right? Seeing how other people do things and the options that they picked out, I really, really liked it. And then there is the added, the long arm league that I am a part of for machine quilting. There are, oh goodness, 60, 70 of us, I think, in the league now. And a bunch of us have decided that we will give discounts on the machine quilting. So basically, if you live in an area where you don't have a machine quilter and you participate in the cow, the quilt along, it's kind of confusing because you have KAL, CAL, and QAL. And pretty much all cows, right? So this is the quilt along. And if you participate in that and send it to one of us as machine quilters by a certain cutoff date, then we will give you a 20% discount on the long arm quilting part of it. So that should be fun. And I'm hoping that maybe I will have one or two people take me up on that offer. So that is the Meadowland Cow. Yeah, by then came June. So looking forward to starting that. So that's 2 quilts to get done this month as well, or in the next 5 weeks. So a little bit more than a month, but I should have quite a little bit of quilting to show you. So again, let me know. I haven't really had a whole lot of homestead updates, except we did finally get some eggs. So they're starting to lay again. The days are getting longer, and I can tell the shadows on the screen here. It's about 5 o'clock at night, and it is just starting. The sun is going down, just starting to. So I'm sorry about the lighting, but this was my one little chance to get this in. But the chickens are starting to lay again a little bit, and so I'm hoping that production will continue to increase. And it's been so much fun working at the greenhouse now and planting flowers, some of the flower seeds that take longer to come up and get going. So I have been planting just as fast as I can. And oh my goodness, opening up that first bag of potting soil just brought back so many memories of working there years ago. So I'm very much enjoying that. Whew, that was a lot to rattle through. Thank you for your patience. Thank you for sticking with me. And like I started to say, let me know what content you're interested in. Do I need to dial back on, I wasn't going to talk much about the dishcloths, and then I had some feedback that, hey, we want to see them. We want to follow along. So I am more than willing to put in segments that you're interested in, but I don't want to bore you. So if you have any feedback, let me know. I would love to hear that. But I am going to, before I completely lose the light here, I am going to go take care of my chickens for the evening and maybe make myself a cup of tea. And I am going to plop down in my knitting chair and I am going to see if I can get some sheep knit up on my sheep head hat tonight. I would love to get to the end of that chart. So that's my plan. I hope you have time for some knitting this week too. And until I see you again, may your gathering basket overflow with blessings. See you next time.